Taoiseach, what started as a cost of living crisis has now become a cost of greed crisis. Entire industries are taking advantage of this crisis by inflating their prices to unsustainable levels. Corporate profits were up 30% at the end of last year, while domestic companies saw profits surge by 17%. The ECB has now warned that profiteering by companies is the main driver of inflation. This is greedflation, plain and simple, and people are suffering as a result. While companies make bumper profits, ordinary consumers are unable to afford basics like food and heat. Already this year, calls to St Vincent de Paul have increased by 20%. With no end in sight to record price increases, an increasing number of workers and families are on the brink. We know energy companies are engaged in obscene profiteering. Wholesale energy prices fell 41% in the last 3 months of 2022 and have continued to fall this year. Despite this, prices for residential customers have yet to fall. Your government claims it wants to see energy companies reduce prices, but the minister seems incapable of doing anything more than wagging his finger at the companies. We're now told his long-promised windfall tax won't be operable until the autumn. Taoiseach, food inflation has been surging for 2 years and is now running at nearly 17%. Annual grocery bills have increased by more than €1,200 in the past 12 months alone. How are people on fixed incomes like pensioners and disabled people expected to cope with these enormous price increases? Many are being forced to either cut down or cut out meals. Our most vulnerable citizens are going without. It's also increasingly difficult for struggling parents on low and middle incomes to ensure there is food on the table for their children. The biggest price increases have not been to luxury products. They've been to basics like butter, bread and pasta. Now the supermarkets have decided en masse to decrease the prices of milk and butter. This so-called supermarket war looks more like a phony battle of convenience. They want to give the illusion of action while continuing to clean up. A big problem is there is no transparency about prices. The Competition and Consumer Protection Commission repeatedly tells us it has no role in even monitoring price levels. The government is now planning to introduce a food regulator that will be similarly toothless. Farmers will continue to be at the mercy of processors and retailers, and so will consumers. Taoiseach, the government should be able to do more than merely describe a problem. You have the power to act. I have 2 questions. What are you doing to counteract the spiralling greedflation and out-of-control costs? Will you give the proposed new regulator the powers it needs to investigate what is really happening within supply chains?
Thank you, Deputy Kearns.
Well, first of all, I think there have been a number of fundamental factors. Inflation has been multifactorial. It's not just greed inflation, and there's an element of that without doubt in it, and that's why we have a windfall tax in respect of energy companies to pull back excessive profits built on the back of the crisis. But it has been multifactorial. The first initial inflation wave came in terms of the rebound from COVID, with consequential impacts on supply chains. And there was real challenges there in terms of supply and demand, which did increase the prices and inflation. And then the energy crisis was real, initiated and created by Russia in terms of pulling back supplies and leading to further inflationary pressures, which have fed into costs for food producers and for producers and manufacturing more generally. And then in terms of retail and in terms of other sectors, there are agencies, and the Consumer Competition Authority is there. The new food ombudsman and regulator is not toothless and will be there in terms of creating transparency around the issue of food prices more generally. The government has responded to this inflationary cycle by unprecedented intervention of about 12 billion. In terms of, and last week alone, as a result of those measures, 1.3 million pensioners, and you mentioned pensioners, carers, people with disabilities, lone parents and working families, received an additional €200 to their normal weekly social welfare payment. And the reduced VAT rate of 9% on electricity and gas will continue until the end of October. as I said, the fourth €200 electricity credit appeared in people's accounts last month. In terms of education, we are introducing the free school books for every pupil in primary schools and special schools, and that will help greatly hard-pressed families. The school transport costs for the school year 23-24 reduced charges of between 50 and 75 per student, with a cap per family of 125. There's a waiver for this year's state examination fees for students sitting to junior cert and leaving cert, and the hot school meals programme will be extended to all Desh primary schools from September. That benefits 64,000 children. So there are very targeted measures to deal with those most in need in respect of food and respect of heating, energy, and a variety of other supports. And we have introduced and brought in about 8 separate cost of living lump sum payments over the last 12 months. A 25% reduction in childcare, which is significant for families, particularly hard-pressed families, and additional core payments of €12 a week for pensioners. We need to do more, and we've extended the fuel allowance as well to a further 80,000 elderly people. Now, I say all of that because it gets dismissed in the House, and one would be mistakenly believing that all of this didn't happen, or there was no intervention from government. There is. In terms of the windfall, that is there, but fundamentally, in terms of the inflationary cycle, there's quite a range of factors that have been responsible for it. And in terms of the food prices are up about 13% in March. We acknowledge that. It's compared to about a 19% on average across Europe. But in education and in health and transport, it's a different story because of government intervention.
I recognise the different things that had an impact on it, but I was highlighting the fact that wholesale energy prices fell 41%. And they had yet to fall for residential customers, and we're only seeing the windfall tax in the autumn. And now we have similar issues in terms of the cost of food. And Tánaiste, the ECB is clear that corporate profits are now the main driver of that inflation, not the other factors. So the pain being inflicted by the ECB to control inflation interest rate hikes is not being felt by corporations. It's being felt by ordinary workers and families whose mortgages are going up. And we're due another interest rate hike today. That will be the 7th interest rate hike in less than a year. And all of the pain of the crisis being visited is on ordinary workers and families. So on the one side, the supermarkets and energy companies are among those price gouging with kind of wild abandon. And on the other hand, the ECB is tightening the screw even further with incessant increases in interest rates. And none of what you said addresses that. It's just giving out different payments to try and kind of make it less painful for people, but it's not addressing the cause of the problem. And the pressure for people is too much to bear. Those payments aren't addressing it anymore. A tiny decrease in butter and milk isn't the answer to this. And the Agriculture, Food and Supply Chain Bill will be at report stage and final stage in the Dáil next week. And I'm just asking you, Tánaiste, to please revisit this. Now is the chance to really address the issues in relation to food prices. There can be some management of this going forward. Because it's not primary producers like farmers who benefit, and it's not consumers.
The whole purpose of that legislation is to help the primary producer. And that was the origin. That's why Fianna Fáil in opposition, we argued for this. And in government, three parties agreed. The three parties agreed to put, you haven't come forward any amendments or suggested amendments today, no. But in any event, if I could, again, I didn't interrupt it, but I just want to make the point. That legislation is the first of its kind in relation to food pricing. And it will bring far greater transparency, and it's designed to help the primary producer. To bring down inflation more generally, that's why the ECB is increasing interest rates, because they were at historically low levels. Every economist would acknowledge that. So government does have to intervene to reduce the pain, as you said. That's the right thing to do in the exceptional circumstances we've experienced with a war in Ukraine, and with coming out of the first pandemic in 100 years, which has had huge implications for supply chains more generally. And we do have to get inflation down. And we do have to make sure that we deal with, and there's agencies there to deal with the behaviour of companies and so on like that.
Thomas Pringle on behalf